First story, she spent hours gazing at herself in the mirror, examining every aspect of her makeup and hair. She nearly convinced herself she was ready. Nearly. The eyebrow still wasn't right. The hairline appeared too high. But it was acceptable. Wasn't it? It had to be. She glanced at her phone. She had 10 minutes left until he said he would arrive. Her hands shook with a mix of fear and excitement. She took one final glance in the mirror. "You can do this, Elena," she reassured herself. Her tone was gentle, yet she felt she could still rehearse more. She had practiced sufficiently. She had transitioned only 4 months prior. She managed her coursework, but this had taken precedence for her. She could redo the classes. She only had one opportunity to be herself. She had wrestled with this decision for many years, but she understood she could never transition back in her hometown. Her parents wouldn't accept it. Not that they were prejudiced. They merely had expectations for the son. She had her own aspirations. She picked up her purse and adjusted her dress as she opened her apartment door. Deep breaths. She checked her phone. Pulling in now. He texted, "Can I really go through with this?" She surprised herself with this newfound assurance. She stood at the entrance of her building, nervously pinching the edges of her outfit. A black Charger pulled up, its windows heavily tinted. She felt overwhelmed by a torrent of emotions. The window slid down. He resembled his photos on the app. His chin was strong and his features defined. He was lean with curly black hair that framed his face. "Elena?" he inquired, his voice deeper than she anticipated. "Nice to meet you, Charlie, right?" Her voice emerged rough and lower than she desired. Her confidence plummeted like an anchor, sinking her into the depths of her insecurities. He smiled, though. If her voice bothered him, he didn't let it show. "Come around and get in. Is the plan still Tony's?" "That's the plan unless you know a better place," she replied, his smile putting her back on firmer ground. The door handle clicked awkwardly as she yanked it open. She hesitated as she took in the interior. Cans, primarily soda, and some beer littered the floorboard. The seat was made of well-worn leather. She instinctively edged back an inch. "Come on, get in, babe." He flashed that smile once more. Perhaps it was her nerves, but she climbed in regardless. She noticed it a moment too late. The door swung shut. The handle on the interior passenger door was missing. She tried to prevent it from closing. Click. It was too late. He had already locked the door. Before she could cry out, the car sped out of the parking lot. "I got you, faggot," he chuckled with sickening satisfaction. She had just a single opportunity. He was preoccupied with his win. As he guffawed at her, she slipped her right hand into her bag. A single fluid action. The handgun aimed at his thin face. Not at all. Bang. Bang. Now let's see second story. When I was a child, everything was less complicated. My dad brought me up to be a man, and it resonated with me. You know? I attempted to raise my son in exactly the same manner, but for some reason, everything feels much more complex these days. Perhaps his mom spoiled him too much, or perhaps YouTube has damaged his mind. I'm not sure. It's possible that this new generation is flawed in a way that can't be repaired, and simplicity will never return. As his father, it's my responsibility not to give up on him. I will teach that boy how to be a man, even if it kills me. But I must tell you, it's even more challenging now that he's starting middle school, and the bullies have realized that Timmy is a big crying baby. I acknowledge that I shouldn't say that. He's my blood, for heaven's sake. But my son is a weakling. I can understand why they target him. Honestly, if I were his age, I would pick on him as well. I've urged him to confront his bullies. There are plenty of them. I've explained that they will continue to harass him until he stands up for himself. Unfortunately, my son lacks even a shred of bravery. The bullying situation escalated one day when I returned home from work, and Timmy's arm was in a brace. "What in the world happened?" I yelled. My son winced, looking at his feet, and I grabbed him by his brace. "I'm speaking to you, boy." It was Wally. He cried. Wally Walker! Wally Walker, Bill's son. I knew him from the meatpacking plant. He was a fool and a jerk. It seemed Wally was following in his father's footsteps. Timmy dashed to the safety of his room, and his mom came and said that all of this was not a big deal. It's just a sprain, she said. He'll be fine shortly. His arm might heal, but he will still be a crybaby. Time won't mend that. If I wanted my son to toughen up, then I had to set an example. So that's what I did. Timmy, come here, I said. I want to show you something. We went to the living room, where I pulled up YouTube and played a video from our local news. The fire occurred in the middle of the night, incinerating the house with everyone inside. There were no survivors. Timmy recognized it was Wally's house. They were gone before the fire engulfed them, but I didn't mention that. You see, I said, that is how you handle bullies. I thought my boy would be excited, but instead, he started to cry. He ran to his mother, sobbed, then fled to his room. Goodness, what is he crying about now? I asked. Oh, it's nothing. He said he was sorry for lying. He injured his arm when he fell off his bike. Now, third story. I was merely outside my home watering the plants in the backyard when unexpectedly, a call came from over my fence. The watering can slipped from my grasp without my noticing as I simply stared at the fence where the voice originated. They called out again and pressed my face against the wooden boards of the fence, looking through the gaps to ensure I wasn't mistaken. But I was not. They shouted for a third time, and this time I responded, telling them to hold on for a moment. Unlocking my front door and walking to the back, I encountered a cheerful middle-aged man who greeted me with a friendly smile, as if we were longtime friends. It was my neighbor, Matt, standing there on the grass as clearly as the sun shines, on a cloudless day. He was just as he usually is, chatting endlessly about everything and anything. I managed to inquire about what he had been up to over the past week, to which he replied that he had taken a trip to France. Taking his phone from his pocket, he showed me some pictures of himself at the Eiffel Tower and trying French cuisine. They appeared real, very real. I nodded along, maintaining composure as he continued to converse with me. And when he finally departed, I couldn't move any quicker as I hurried to the shed. Returning with a shovel in hand, I walked to a specific spot in my garden and began to dig. I shoveled the soil as fast as I could until at last, I uncovered the face of a man. The face of Matt, my neighbor whom I had killed the previous week. Now let's see fourth story. The candle's flame wavered as I completed the last symbol, my hands quaking against the wooden floor. Mom's locket, the one she never removed, still stained with ash from the incident, was positioned in the center of the chalk circle. The hushed voices of my friends filtered underneath the bedroom door. This feels wrong, Lily, but I chose to disregard them. The book had guaranteed a pathway, an opportunity to say farewell. The incantation had a metallic taste on my tongue. For 3 minutes, there was silence. Then, brrring, brrring. My phone illuminated, creating sharp shadows. The screen glowed with the contact photo I couldn't bring myself to erase. Mom, laughing, sunlight gleaming in her hair. Hello? I rasped, with the speaker on. Sweetheart. Her voice, like warm honey, with the slight rasp from her endless camel reds. Tears blurred the ritualistic symbols. She inquired about school, about Dad's most recent deployment, and I chattered away, thrilled, until, who's outside the room, Lily? A shiver crept up my neck. Just friends. Why? Let me speak to them. Remove the phone from the circle. The book's warning flashed through my mind. Do not break the circle. I can't. Mom, what's... You've always been selfish. She spat, voice turning sour. A mistake. We never wanted you. I flinched. This wasn't her. It couldn't be. My lungs constricted. But I reached for reason. Prove it's you. Say my middle name. Silence. Then, a wet, gurgling laugh. the tone rising until it was no longer Mom at all. It transformed into something sharp, male, and delighted. "Oh, you're entertaining. Let's negotiate. Take the phone outside, and I'll retrieve Mommy's soul for real. Otherwise..." A muffled scream resonated in the background. Human. Raw. "No!" I lunged for the candle, blowing forcefully. The flame remained steady. "Too late," the creature sang. "She's screaming now. Always will be. Because of you." I slammed end call. The candle extinguished, smoke curling into a scowl. My friends discovered me huddled in the hallway, crying. They took me to Ava's home, where I sipped cocoa that lacked flavor. Yet when I returned at dawn, the phone still remained in the circle. One voicemail. I pressed play. The scream wasn't human. It was a chorus of hundreds, thousands, my mom's voice tearing through them all. "Lily, please," before fading into static. When I searched for the book, it was missing. But occasionally, at 3 a.m., my phone lights up. Unknown caller. I let it ring. Last fifth story. In the mid-1800s, there lived a young girl whose beauty was renowned throughout the village and the nearby areas of the parish of Roughton. Her father, the miller, toiled every day to support his family. A benevolent and generous man beloved by all, his daughter was the light of his life and the gem in Roughton's crown. Appropriately, she was named Abigail, which means a father's joy, or beautiful. She was cherished by many but only had feelings for one man, a young laborer from the nearby farm named John. Unfortunately, he was a cruel and self-centered man. Nothing pleased him more than to lead a girl astray before discarding her like a worthless rag once he had satisfied his desires. Abigail's father was aware of John's reputation and made every effort to keep her away from such a negative influence. But who can obstruct the desires of a young girl's heart? Certainly not the miller. And so it came to be that Abigail, blinded by her supposed love for a man she thought she could reform, made plans to escape under the cover of darkness with him in 3 days, during the early spring moon. John, being the arrogant sort, couldn't resist revealing his scheme after too much ale at the local tavern 2 days later, and news reached the miller of what was to take place the following night. In a fit of anger, he devised a trap for John, intending to halt him literally in his tracks. Thus, the night arrived. The spring moon illuminated brightly and high in the sky as John rode his horse along the quiet country roads toward his secret meeting with Abigail. He had no intention of actually eloping, his heart as dark as the night sky. All he desired was to indulge in his passion and leave the poor girl behind. Racing as swiftly as his horse could carry him, he failed to notice the taut metal wire strung between 2 trees ahead of him. Abigail stood atop the mill, watching and waiting for the man she adored. She heard the hooves before she spotted the rider, but what she witnessed shattered her heart into countless fragments. A black horse charged into view. The rider, still upright, had lost his head. Overcome with grief and shattered, she lost all hope in that moment and resolved that if she could not live with the man she loved, she wouldn't wish to live without him either. As the horse came to a stop at the base of the mill, she leaped off the top to join her lover for all eternity.